Hey, so today we're going to look at a really great way to connect up scale shapes across the board so that you're not limited to one zone of the neck when you're using scales to improvise. This is the simplest way I've found to do this, and what it relies upon is a little bit of an understanding of relative major and minor keys. It's not complicated, but if you've spent a lot of time looking at learning 5 or 6 scale patterns of the same scale. So in this case, we're looking at G minor. What we're instead going to do here is look at mixing up G minor scales with B flat major scale patterns that we might be familiar with. This is the simplest way I've found to not only connect scale patterns up on the board, but also to maximize what you've already learned. So for example, a lot of us might have learned a pentatonic scale and then maybe a major scale. Well, just with those two together combined, you can play an awful lot of material in a lot of different keys, a lot of different modes, and you can move those shapes around and connect them up in really, really effective ways without having to, go ahead and work on 5 or 6 shapes of the same scale that you're trying to then recall when you're improvising. So my approach here is to have as little material as possible to memorize and spend more time on thinking about what notes you're using. So let's have a little look at the shapes we're going to use for this exercise first. First up, a very familiar shape to a lot of us will be this minor pentatonic shape, and we're going to do this in the key of G minor for today. So we're down here at the 3rd fret, and we're using this minor pentatonic shape here, this basic shape down here at the 3rd fret. The crucial note, the connecting note that we need to look at first, to allow us to move out of this position here, is this minor third here on the 6th fret, the note B flat. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to now connect that G minor pentatonic with a B flat major scale shape. So we're not going to think about now, how many G minor pentatonic shapes can we link together up the board. We're going to take a different approach. We're going to look at this B flat major scale, 3 notes per string pattern, that looks like this. Okay, we're going to look at that shape, and that's box 2 on the diagram. So those two are going to connect together via this connecting note here, which is the minor third in G minor, or the root note of B flat major. Okay, so essentially what we're doing then is now starting to visualize. In the first instance, we're starting to visualize this link. So I'm going to visualize those linking notes, and we're going to try and start experimenting a little bit with just moving between those 2 shapes. That's the first stage of this, is just to get really, really familiar with 2 shapes of the 3. To start to get comfortable, to see where you can connect those notes, because obviously on each different string there's a different way of connecting those 2 scales together. So it's worth spending a bit of time just familiarizing yourself with that really, really slowly, and just really, really starting to see the patterns. And a really great way to do this actually is to take sort of a pair of strings and just work on those. So for example, let's take the B string and the G, and let's just think about how we connect up those 2 scales with just using those 2 strings. So these are our 2 notes from the G minor pentatonic. Okay, so what we can do there is then start to look at how that connects up with this 3 notes per string scale. Okay, so this now leads down between the 2. We found a little line there on the G, and on the B, so we're starting to now straight away turn that almost into a new scale pattern of its own. And thinking in those little zones is really useful actually, because what we don't want to do when we're connecting up scale patterns is, when we come to use it for something, is to just play up and down the scale, and then go to the next scale and play up and down the scale. We want to do that more natural sounding and the more natural looking approach, where we think about maybe a pair of strings or 3 strings and we can then connect those scales up in a more sort of organic sounding way. So there's the first pair. So let's just pull in the third diagram, the third shape that's going to connect up all three. So if we're now moved into the second diagram, we're in the B flat major, that 3 notes per string scale. This now connects with a G natural minor scale, again starting up here on the 10th fret on the A string. That connects directly in several places with the top half of this B flat major. So we can really easily start to see the overlaps between those two scale boxes there. Okay, so then moving straight ahead to how we complete this whole cycle, this whole pattern. Those are the 3 shapes we're going to learn. That's the only shapes we're going to learn for this. What that top G natural minor shape does is connect directly with the G minor pentatonic shape up here at the 15th fret, connects with it directly. So we're now back where we started. We're now back at box 1 again, but we're an octave up. So really we're connecting the whole fretboard with just these 3 shapes. So the crucial thing, again, as I said, is to really be able to think of that B flat major scale as a G minor scale for the purposes of soloing in G minor. Likewise, though, of course, we can switch things up and think about B flat major as our root key, and we can then use the G minor scales as B flat major. So we're really relying on our ability to identify the root notes and the chord tones. So that's where we want to spend our time, thinking about what key we're in, what we're playing over, and spending our time thinking about note choices rather than sort of noodling and going up and down the scales. Okay, so let's take a look at a little example of how we might connect these 3 up.